Yeah, fine. Yeah, ready? Yeah, on behalf of myself and the Indian Society of Animal Production Management, National Conference of Livestock, UTKARSHA, India, I wholeheartedly welcome Robyn Alders, EU, from Australia. She is a senior consulting fellow, Global Health Program, and also UK honorary professor, Development Policy Center, Australian National University. She is also director of KEMA Foundation, Australia, and she is adjunct professor, Department of Infectious Diseases and Global Health, School of Veterinary Medicine, Tufts University. It's a great privilege for me to talk to Robyn Alders, who really served many years in her life in Africa and various countries, mainly in terms of providing nutritional security through poultry rearing, mainly backyard poultry rearing. Her interventions in some of the emerging diseases in poultry is really applaudable, and she could give a good solution for this solution when the health issues pertaining to the poultry and all. And she's a big campaigner for agriculture, nutrition, and health, and also gift-free. We met her in many occasions. It's a great warm welcome from me.
Thank you so much. I'm very pleased to be here.
Thank you very much. And I have a few issues to be discussed with you. How you're going to feel the temperatures and weather in India. Are you comfortable now?
Yes, the temperature is a little warmer than normal for me, and I understand that across the country and across the globe that the rising temperatures are making changes for all of us.
Yeah, I know that you're traveling seriously in various places of the country. Even before you coming to India, you had been to some other place. And thanks to you, because you traveled again to India and reached to north coastal Andhra Pradesh, which is an extreme northern side. And thank you very much for that.
Thank you. It's been a real pleasure to participate in your conference.
Yeah. How you feel that all the 2 days proceedings you might have observed, you might have heard every minute, every second you are here supporting us. So what exactly your feelings are as far as the technical output of the conference?
I'm really heartened by the breadth of topics that have been presented and also the range of people who have been presenting. I think veterinary science and livestock animal science would seem to be in good shape here in India, and I'm really pleased to see that the interest that people take, particularly in supporting more vulnerable households and in conserving indigenous breeds of livestock. I think these are really important contributions.
Fine. Yeah, you must have interacted with our scientists, or our scientists must be benefited by interaction with you. How you rate our scientists and their attitudes and all?
Once again, I'm impressed by the level of science, but also by the holistic approach. So not just looking at a single experimental design, but also understanding the need for this to work in a way that's going to be sustainable, that will fit within the natural cycles of where the animals are being raised, and within the cultural setting for the people who raise them.
So you mean to say that we have a very good, animal is a cultural part of India. You felt that?
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not in commercial lines. We don't export the animals. This is a part of a culture of tradition of India. Right?
That would seem to be really immensely clear during the presentations, that understanding the importance of the role of animals in your cultural life, and also the importance of one welfare, so that it's welfare for people, welfare for animals, gives a really good outcome.
Thank you for the compliment. Then coming to the pastoralism. Yesterday we had a paper on the pastoralism. In Indian system mainly, the livestock raiding is on the grazing systems. So our pastures are not so much comparable and well organized as in Australia. Australia, the government take a lot of initiatives and they spend a lot of huge money for development of the pastures. So that gives a really good path for the small ruminant production. So how best we can improve our pastoral system in India, organized way?
I think the important thing is to look at history in the long term. Certainly some advances have been made in Australia, but also it's been important to see what we have learnt over the years. Initially, particularly when Australia was colonised by the British, there was an idea that for pastures to look good, they should look green and they should look familiar to people from England. Over the years, we've understood that this is not necessarily the case. Some of the pastures with the highest protein levels are actually Indigenous pastures, the pastures that endure best during times of drought. May also be Indigenous pastures. So we're learning to look again, to appreciate what some of the introduced pasture species can contribute, particularly perennial pastures, but also doing that in combination with some of the perennial Indigenous pastures, which are very well adapted to the local conditions.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, my specific point is, what kind of government policy initiatives in Australia? So they've given the policy making itself, the huge money is funded for the pastoral development. So that's kind of organization. So what kind of the suggestion you can also give to us in terms of policy initiatives?
Once again, I think India and Australia, we've had long relationships, and the important thing for a government policy is not necessarily the amount of money. What is important is having that longevity of funding. Yeah. We know that in farming, change takes time, that no 1 year on the rangeland or on a farm is going to be the same as another year. What is important is trend over time. So having a government commitment over the long term to be able to test and to trial interventions and then to learn from them, and certainly not to have cuts in funding. We need that constant change, particularly as we enter this time of great weather variability due to climate change. Having that consistency of funding and that broad spectrum of metrics. So it's not just about pasture yield, it's not just about growth rate in animals, but also looking at systems that support biodiversity, agro-biodiversity in livestock breeds, and systems that aim to be carbon neutral over time. So measuring and having all of those metrics so that your diverse production systems can also contribute to the global debate. As we know, there's a lot of misunderstanding in relation to livestock production, and some of that is due to the fact that we just don't have enough data across the different range of production systems. And some production systems are going to be much more sustainable, much more healthy for environments and soils than other production systems. And the scientists here in India have a really important role to contribute to that discussion.
Yeah. Right, agree that you are emphasizing the role of the scientist as well as the pastoral community
Yes.
They have to be integrated
Absolutely.
in order to sustain the pasture lands and also natural grass lands in India. That's a
Yes.
great way of advice. So coming to your services and your expertise, livelihoods. So you feel that you have worked for long providing the livelihoods through egg, poultry.
Poultry, absolutely,
Poultry, yeah.
particularly indigenous chickens. Yes.
Indigenous chicken.
Yes.
We can say it is a backyard poultry. Yeah. So can you share your experiences of how you just moved to the African place where there is a real hunger and the people were suffering? Then how you started, that's really, that shows a good story for us, a success story, which we can all take as a symbol for us. Will you please start with your journey?
I guess the most important part of my journey was that I was actually born and raised on a farm in Australia. And so my starting point is that farmers make sound decisions based on their circumstances. So when I first arrived in Zambia, in southern Africa, what was immediately clear was that the most commonly raised livestock across the country was the indigenous chicken. Almost every household had at least one or two birds. But the households had difficulty really benefiting from those birds because of Newcastle disease. So I was fortunate to be able to link with the late Professor Peter Spradbrough from the University of Queensland and Dr. John Copland with the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research. Together they had developed a thermotolerant Newcastle disease vaccine that's avirulent, and so it's ideal for controlling Newcastle disease in village settings where we don't have rigid cold chains, and where being able to administer a vaccine via eye drop is very useful because there's no needles involved, and so that sits better with veterinary legislation in most places. And the other important thing was involving community vaccinators, so that it was actually the communities that worked together. And then from Zambia, we started a cost recovery program in Mozambique, where the Mozambican government wanted to be able to produce their own vaccine and then to have farmers contribute to purchasing the vaccine and to supporting the work of the community vaccinator. So it was sustainable because the government made some subsidies in terms of producing vaccine relatively cheaply, and the farmers were involved because they were willing to pay a price per bird to be able to vaccinate and to see that those birds were then protected and to see their flocks increase. So it was really a team effort to develop that model, and it was at a time that in fact most animal health services were being given away free. So cattle vaccination, cattle dipping, it was all free, but often dependent on external funding. If there was external funding available, things went well. If that funding wasn't there, it fell apart. By setting up a system where farmers were contributing as well, it gave much more resilience to the system and enabled it to continue irrespective of external funding.
That's great, that's great. You might have done some impact studies also in terms of hunger index, or rather their security, nutrition security. How do you express that you really impacted their lives?
Yes, I guess my main reason for wanting to work with village poultry and control Newcastle disease was to ensure that young children would have access to animal source food. Very critical, particularly in those first 2 years of their life during the pregnancy and breastfeeding period for women. You can eat a lot of maize or you can eat a lot of rice, but it's not a complete diet. And if you are able to add even 2 eggs a week, it can be quite transformational in diets that are relatively poor, lacking in diversity and certainly lacking in key micronutrients that products such as egg and poultry meat and liver deliver very small quantities and very nutrient rich. So having that opportunity, you know, in some of the communities where we work, you'd ask the question, when was the last time you enjoyed eating chicken? And they couldn't remember. So it would go from I can't remember to last week. Once they were sure that birds would always be there, that they weren't going to lose them to an outbreak of Newcastle disease, they could have that luxury of eating or of offering to a special visitor, you know, an esteemed visitor, guest, and that's a very important way of building social cohesion as well.
one thing, I was really delighted you to see symbolizing Namaste, Indian culture. That's fantastic. Thanks for that. You started learning our own symbolic respect, like giving a symbol.
Yes.
Similarly, when you are in Africa, what kind of respect you symbolize when you approach them? We would like to know. Our people also would like to know.
I think the most important, as you say, every place has its own cultural traditions, and I think the most important thing is to show respect for those local cultures and to understand that how people live, how they respect each other, and the knowledge they've gained from those living intimately in their landscape is the most important. So the important thing initially is to arrive open to learn, and then maybe together you can solve some challenges.
Right. When you're reaching community, you should be a part of a community. Then that's what you start with the cultural done.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Coming to the, can you give a message to the global people, on the AFC again, like animal source for ASF, like any kind of a message really that has got a value? Yeah.
Certainly animal source food has been critical in the way humans have evolved anatomically and physiologically, particularly for women of reproductive age and growing children. Animal source food in moderate quantities, say, at least 20% of the diet, is quite crucial to be able to grow and to reach your full potential. So that's certainly important in terms of the health and well-being of individuals. But importantly, if we want to talk about the health of landscapes, animals are part of the landscape, and the soil, the microbes in the soil, the vegetation, that's all evolved with animals as part of that system. And if you take animals out of the system, that the ecosystems themselves will degrade. It's true that sometimes humans have managed animals badly, and it's contributed to environmental degradation. But if we are able to manage following agroecological principles and using regenerative practices, then the sound management of livestock, particularly on rangeland, really contributes to building the health of those landscapes.
Yeah, I understand that what you are exactly mentioning is animal is not only contributing the food, it also keeps us with the ecology, environment, ideal environment. So in order to maintain the ecosystem, animal need to survive. That's what the message is.
Yes.
Okay. Yesterday we were discussing on the sustainable issues. Livestock production systems, how it's going to be sustainable? What kind of the measures, what kind of the plans we should have to make it more sustainable, more economical, more profitable, and it's viable?
Yes.
The changing scenario.
A good question for which there is no single answer. People, their livestock and their environment, it's a matter of really ensuring that the management practices fit with where you are. In many cases, particularly where you have dominant wet and dry seasons, the ability to be able to move animals is very important. So not leaving animals in one place. Even in Australia now, where we do have a lot of fenced landscapes, regenerative practices have really helped to transform that. So we need to manage the number of animals in relation to the biomass of vegetation that's available for them and our understanding of what the next season is going to be like. So it's working with your conditions, managing your animals and putting soil first in many cases. In terms of sustainable production, I think in countries such as India, you do a much better job. You use the products of animals very efficiently. If an animal is slaughtered, then in most cases, all edible parts of that carcass are used for human consumption. In high-income countries, we have tended to become rather inefficient, and that a significant portion of edible parts of carcass are not always eaten by people. They may go to some of our obese pets or used in other ways. So it's very much about ensuring recycling of nutrients, but that nutrients that are produced are used as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, that's great. Come back to again the poultry. Yeah, we have in Indian, we have a number of poultry strains, backyard strains, apart from the native breeds like Asil and all. Like we have Vanarajas, Girirajas, they are known, and also SVVU produced Rajasri, a backyard poultry. But they are flight birds, they're flightless birds. We have enormous pressure from the rural villages for want of these birds. We are, to some extent, we are able to synthesize these breeds, and is giving under public distribution system or some link to the government systems, government schemes. How best we can scale up this kind of providing the backyard poultry, because we thought of having a villages, chick villages, or day-old chick villages we identified. Then we went there, kept the incubators, and then we started. But we could not come up with the meeting of the requirement of the people, because there is a good enormous pressure from the public. They wanted to have these birds. How best we can scale up, because you have worked with this kind of system?
Yes, it's a good question, and it is very important to maintain this the pool of indigenous stock, and to ensure that they're not necessarily being lost through crossbreeding. So maintaining those pure breeds or ecotypes is very important. I guess my first question is, why do you have to keep distributing? Why is it that if birds are distributed, their numbers are not increasing in the villages? So is there something going on in terms of survivability of these birds that could be helped so that their numbers are growing within the village, reducing the need for constant replacement stock being sent out from a breeding centre?
So we can further scale it up in order to meet the livelihoods and all. That's great. Yeah. What are the other experiences here in the conference? Right?
I've enjoyed interacting with your participants, and particularly seeing the new generation coming through. I think that's very exciting. And also to see how technology brings us all together. So some of us were able to join here, others were able to join via the internet, and I think that's very important, and it helps to make our world a smaller place so that we're all able to interact together as we enter these challenging times, particularly to 2030, to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and to put our world on a more sustainable footing. Having that collaboration, understanding that each person can make a contribution and each person can learn from the experience of others. I think that's very important.
That's great. I hope I'm not failing that these Indian scientists are really working for the farming community. You're taking the same message to leaving this place?
Yes, I have taken that, and I'm also going to remind to inform the farmers with whom I work at home, but also remind our government that also you have to constantly remind government that without farmers there would be no city, there would be no civilization. If there wasn't extra food, everyone would be busy preparing food, and you wouldn't have this amazing diversity of disciplines and the richness of our cultures if it wasn't for the farming community. Yeah,
that's right. Understanding this, our government of India and as well as Andhra Pradesh government took a lot of initiatives on protecting the farmers' interests, especially the small ruminant areas. We are providing the free insurance premium paid by the government. So when the small ruminant sheep dies, the compensation goes to the farmer. So that kind of the policy initiatives, and we are also providing a kind of not only the technical support, but also the feed and other resources to the farmers. We have established so many rural fodder banks as well. So I think, the governments now, they're taking, the agriculture is the prime sector, mainly the livestock is the prime sector, because livestock in India is getting a very double-digit GDP.
I think the government of Andhra Pradesh is setting an excellent example, and I've already started feeding that back into my communities in Australia.
That's great. Thank you very much. I think I'm
Thank
sorry
you so
if I
much.
troubled you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for our great interview.
Thank you.